Thank you, President Ken. Thank you, everyone, for coming to the 4th Annual Homecoming Made My Day. Good morning, Rotarians and special guests. Our homecoming speaker today is past Rotary District 5130 Governor Jim Flamson. Jim was born in San Luis Obispo, California, and at the age of 3 months moved with his family to a small town, Calistoga, in the Napa Valley. Yay! San Luis Obispo called him back for his college years, and in 1972, Jim graduated from Cal Poly. After graduation, Jim spent 2 years in the Los Angeles area before he moved back to Calistoga with his wife, Kathy. There, he took over his late father's insurance agency, where he continued to work until its sale in January of 2008. He is a California licensed tax preparer and continues in that profession to this day. Jim was a volunteer fireman for over 10 years in Calistoga, holding the position of fire chief for 2 of those years, and he still helps out when needed with mutual aid and wildland fires. He has been a Little League coach and a scout leader, as well as a Scout Troop Committee chairman, assistant scoutmaster, and scoutmaster for Boy Scout Troop 18. Jim is still active in providing support and inspiration to the scouts and scout leaders and continues to teach orienteering to young scouts. Jim has earned many awards in scouting, including the District Award of Merit and the Silver Beaver, the highest award given to a volunteer scouter. Naturally, he and his wife Kathy are both members of the Rotary Fellowship of Scouting Rotarians. One of his most prized possessions is the Cliff Dockerman Award he received in 2006 for exemplary scouting Rotary service. Jim served as club president in 1999-2000, district club coordinator in 2002 to 2004, assistant governor in 2004 to 2005, chief assistant governor in 2006 through 2008, and finally district governor in 2010-2011, a year very fond to my heart. He was my district governor. He was named District Rotarian of the Year in 2006 to 2007, and most recently, Jim led the district as Future Vision Transition Chair for the Rotary Foundation, and currently serves as District 5130 Stewardship Chair. Please join me in a warm Sebastopol Sunrise homecoming welcome for past District Governor Jim Flamson.
Now let's see if it works. Can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you, Linda. That was actually longer than my speech. Oh. I want to thank Linda for inviting me today, because homecoming has a special meaning to me. Obviously, she missed the memo about never giving a past district governor a microphone, so bear with me here. As she noted in her introduction, I joined Rotary in 1976, 2 years after I moved back to Calistoga with Kathy. And my late father had been a Rotarian in Calistoga during the late 50s and 60s, and so when I was asked to join by the superintendent of schools, I took it seriously. I remember thinking, my dad always talked to me about Rotary and how important it was to go to the meetings and maintain perfect attendance. So I had a goal of maintaining perfect attendance. And I achieved that goal for all 4 years between 1976 and 1980. In 1976, I was an insurance broker. My mother had the tax practice, which she had started in '68. And the extent of my tax knowledge was asking her to do my tax return. When I joined Rotary, my sponsor said, Jim, we have a little problem. We already have 3 insurance agents in the club. So we're going to give you the classification of income tax. Worst decision he ever made, because people would ask me questions and I was just like a deer in the headlights. I think he and my mother had gotten together and decided the fastest way to get me to learn the tax business is to embarrass me at every Rotary meeting with not being able to answer questions. So I did that, and in 1980 my mother retired and was with both the insurance agency and a tax practice. So in January of that year, having still maintained perfect attendance, I realized this is going to be problematic. Taking an hour and a half off in the middle of a Thursday every week, in the middle of tax season, just isn't going to work. So I went to my board of directors and I asked for a 3.5-month leave of absence. So I will be back after April 15th. Well, it was 10 years before I came back to Rotary. I'm going to tell you a few things that happened in that interim. I had an older son, Tom, who in 1977 became the first outbound exchange student for our club. And we hosted the club's second inbound student. She ended up actually living in our house for 7 of the 10 months that she was here from Brazil. Tom, our son, was in her home in Brazil. And those two kids really knew how to work the system. If Tom needed money, Pollyanna asked me for it, and he asked her parents for it, and it just always seemed to work out right. But I got involved in the Boy Scouts. I was still in the fire department. I was fire chief during that interim, and I just was too busy for Rotary, or at least that's what I kept telling myself. And before long, it was out of my mind. I wasn't thinking about it. It was the 80s. I was busy building an insurance business and everything else. And one thing sticks out in my mind during that 10-year period before I came back, and that was in 1985. And it's an image I'll never forget of men in blue shirts with the Rotary emblem walking around Calistoga soliciting donations for Polio Plus. That was the year that the Calistoga Rotary Club raised $25,000, virtually going door to door, mimicking the March of Dimes and collecting money for the new Rotary International End Polio Now campaign. And that was the one time it was for Rotary. I remember seeing these gentlemen, and of course they were all men then, there were no women in Rotary, and thinking, I need to be a part of that, but you know, nobody's asked me. Well, it was 10 years later in 1990 when my original sponsor, Will Drew, who is still alive up in Ferndale actually, and he came to me in my office one day and he said, Jim, isn't it time you came back to Rotary? And I just looked at him and I was saying, yes. I'm sorry nobody asked sooner. And I joined Rotary, a new person. When I was there in 1976, I was 26 years old. I was the youngest Rotarian. In fact, when Tom didn't go to Brazil in 77, he went later. He was born in 77. He was born when I'd been in Rotary 1 year. It was the first child born to an active Rotarian. Well, they couldn't remember. And when it was time to find me, we just happened to be up at the St. Lena Hospital that night for our annual partners dinner at the hospital, when Kathy's upstairs giving birth to the first child of a Rotarian in probably 50 years. I mean, the average age in our club back then was about 90. And the president had no idea what to find me, because nobody had ever, you know what you pay for a car or for a birthday, but what do you pay for a baby? So with the wives there, they decided, let's pass the hat, and whatever we raise, that'll be Jim's fine. He can match it. And to this day, I still hold the record of the largest fine ever paid in the California Rotary Club. And it wasn't too many years ago that I found that bond that we bought with that money. I thought, oh, this belongs to Tom. And I gave it to my son. He was thrilled, of course. So 90, I came back to Rotary and started my perfect attendance again. And before long, I was on the board of directors, and before long, I was doing everything I could to be an active Rotarian. I really enjoyed it, too, because I had a clearer picture of what a Rotarian was. I still hadn't really had my Rotarian moment. But in 1996, one of the most profound things happened in my Rotary career, because in November of 1996, I made my first donation to the Rotary Foundation. It was $20, and I bought raffle tickets for the foundation dinner. I thought, wow, I put money in the foundation. Didn't really even know what the foundation represented. Within 7 months, I got my first Paul Harris Fellow. And it all started from a gentleman by the name of Sid Berlin, who put 250 recognition points in my account and challenged me to finish my Paul Harris Fellow before the end of the Rotary year. And I did, and I got my first Paul Harris Fellow. And as I say, the rest is history. Kathy and I are both now multiple Paul Harris Fellows. We're major donors. And we live and breathe the Rotary Foundation. It's a huge part of our life because we finally found that charitable organization that you could really see the fruit of your labor. I Became president in 99-2000. And you know, you all have your Rotary moments where you do something you don't think you'd ever do if you'd never been in Rotary. This is one of them. I got in an elevator during my PETS conference. And I'm standing in this elevator with the current president of Rotary, or the incoming president of Rotary International, Carl Ravisi, and the president nominee, Frank Devlin, and Cliff Dockerman, and me. And this was late in PETS, so by then I knew who all these people were. And they all looked at me and they said, well, Jim, because you have your name tag on, they said, what are you going to do to make this the best Rotary year your club has ever had? You think I had an answer? I said, I'm going to find the hell out of everybody. I don't know. And we talked all the way up, and I got off that elevator and I went, wow, I've just been in the presence of greatness. And it really got me motivated. And I had one of the best years of my Rotary life as president of my club. A couple of years after I was president, Terry Clark, who many of you know, approached me and said, I'd like you to help me during my year as district governor as a new position called district club coordinator. And I said, well, what is that? She goes, well, it's kind of like a vice assistant governor. You're going to be responsible for 3 clubs, St. Helena, Calistoga, and Middletown. And then I have an assistant governor that will cover all that territory. And I accepted that position kind of hesitantly because I thought, boy, it's going to be a lot of work. Well, it was joyful work, as everything in Rotary is. And the next year when Norm Owen asked me to do it again, and I responded by saying, I didn't think you could do it more than 1 year. He said, well, that's true, but we're going to bend the rules. He's a lawyer, okay? He said, we're going to bend the rules a little bit, and you're going to get the 3 NAPA clubs. And you technically haven't been an ECC for them. So I accepted that position, and as I say, the rest is history. Before long, Bruce Campbell asked me to be an assistant governor. And I had a wonderful year serving under Bruce and traveling around that part of our district with him. I remember meeting in Middletown on one of the hottest days of the year. So then it just kind of, by then I was, you know, as they say, hooked. And when Erna asked me, as she was in governor, when she asked me to be a special invited guest to a zone institute in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, that set the hook. Both Kathy and I spent 3 wonderful days and nights up in Coeur d'Alene, rubbing elbows with the power of our zone and seeing the true picture of Rotary. Kathy had this thing for past President Bill Boyd. She called him her Elvis. And when we were at Zone, I kept asking her, is there anything for us to do here, or are we just supposed to sit and listen? And she goes, well, we're trying to arrange a little special program for all of you special invited guests, you 6. And so the time came, and they said, you're going to go into this room, and we'll have a couple of people in there that will answer any questions you have about Rotary. And we walk into the room, and it's Cliff Dockerman, Glenn Estes, and Bill Boyd, Kathy's oldest. And we had an hour and a half with 3 of the, at that time, biggest leaders of Rotary International. I thought, you know, this is just a wonderful organization. Nobody takes themselves too seriously. Nobody thinks they're too important to talk to the common folk. And I've carried that throughout my career in Rotary. It's just such a wonderful organization. 2003 was another benchmark because that was the year we inducted Kathy into Rotary. I had made Kathy a Paul Harris Fellow when I was president. She was at my side through my presidency. I was the club youth exchange chair a few years, or during the few years before that. The year I became president, she actually took that position for our club. As a non-member, she served as our youth exchange chair. And the club knew then they had somebody that they could count on. So Kathy became a member in 2003 and has been a member as president and been with me throughout all my travels as governor. We attended our first Festival of Brotherhood in 2005, and that's where your Rotary moments are. I've probably had Rotary moments before then, but the ones I remember are the ones that I witnessed and felt and experienced in Mexico during Festival of Brotherhood. If you've never been there, I hope you get a chance to go. If you have been there, I don't need to tell you what you've experienced there, but it's life-changing. You'll cry, you'll smile, you'll laugh, you'll drink a little tequila. It's just a wonderful way to see how well the Rotary Foundation works when it works. We've been to 7 of them. We've had 6 youth exchange students in our home. Everything in our closet has a Rotary emblem on it. We are never without our PIN because we've got it in all our vehicles. We live Rotary. And all that's because somebody asked me to come back to Rotary. I can safely say that if Will Drew hadn't walked into my office in 1990 and said, Jim, isn't it time you came back to Rotary? I never would have experienced what I experienced as a governor. I remember calling and not getting through and emailing my counterpart in Japan the morning of the tsunami because we had a group study exchange team coming to our district in 2 weeks. And I thought, for all I know, they could all be dead. And finally, after 48 hours, Mako, or my governor partner, responded to me and said, the team is on their way. We're not going to let this stop us. And as anybody will remember, that was the most dynamic group study exchange team. These people were hurting. They had lost friends. They had lost property. It was just unbelievable that they even cared enough to come out here. They spent a month with us out here, but they were a very sensitive team. I never would have experienced that had I not been asked back to Rotary. One of the highlights of my year as governor was the ability to submit a nomination for the Rotary Service Above Self Award. Only 150 people in the world every year get that award. And I submitted an application for Frank Lee, Dr. Frank Lee, who for years led Rotoplat missions. And he's a member of my club. And when I got that letter from Rotary International saying, congratulations, Governor Flansing, your nomination has been chosen. And when I surprised him with that at my district conference, it was a watershed moment for me. Never would have gotten to do that if Will Drew hadn't asked me to come back to Rotary. I've met wonderful people. I shook hands with Dr. Bruce Hallward, the Assistant Director of the World Health Organization and the Polio Eradication Initiative Chair. And he and I talked for quite a bit of time at an international convention. He's my office. Never would have gotten to do that if I hadn't come back to Rotary. And you know, I wouldn't have gotten to walk in the rain in San Francisco on October 24th. Yeah, you were there. By the way, that's why I'm not wearing my purple coat. It shrunk after that. The longer it hangs in my closet, the tighter it gets. But you know, what I really think about when I think about what would have happened if I hadn't come back to Rotary, I think of those times in Mexico. I think of the look on the face of those children in the leukemia and cancer ward in Guadalajara at the University Hospital. When they found out that we were there as Rotarians, and we were going to buy shunts so that these kids didn't have to get poked in a different place every day to have their chemo administered. We were going to give them shunts so that every day they could just simply put the needles in there. And I watched them light up when they understood what it was that they were going to get. And it was the simplest thing in the world. We did a matching grant with a club in Guadalajara. I even got to watch Kevin juggle. They were even happier to see that than finding out they were getting shunts. Kathy and I took a trip one day while we were in Guadalajara. It was a 3-hour drive in a car with 3 Mexican gentlemen who didn't speak much English. And if you don't think that's being trapped in a confined space, the two of us in the back seat going, who knows where? And we went out to a little village in the middle of nowhere, 3 hours outside of Guadalajara, to look at a mobile medical clinic. Because our club and the other 4 clubs in the Napa Valley had decided to support a 2-year, which is very unusual, 2-year matching grant to buy an $85,000 mobile medical clinic that would go out and treat the indigenous people outside of the cities. And we spent a whole day out there with these young doctors, and they all told us the same thing. You go to medical school in Mexico. You don't go to work right out of medical school. You go do 2 years of volunteer service. And they fight for the right to volunteer for that mobile medical clinic because they get to do more good. I never got to do that if I hadn't come back to Rotary. So the end of my message is, for those of you that stood earlier, I can't say it strongly enough, this is your opportunity. This club needs you. The world needs you. And it's great for your soul. Come back to Rotary. You're welcome to come back to Rotary. We all want you to come back to Rotary. And I do know that there's one question back there from Keith, because he warned me ahead of time.
No, this is a personal question.
Oh, well, then we'll answer that later. That being said, thank you very much, unless there are any questions.
draw one of those and read the last 4 digits.
1395. 1395.
Alpha takes 3 times.
Okay, is that right? 1395?
One.
Going once? I didn't see anybody sneeze out. How about 1398? Must be a lot of surprises.
It's over here.
That's
It's still on the table.
It's on the table over here. Try again.
1418.
close.
You have it over there, Debbie?
We have lots of things today. Not all of them.
So what are they doing? Putting both halves in? Or 1388. Yeah.
Okay, and I have something for you. John Boletto's a member of our
I know.
club. This was one of his award-winning wines he put in a bottle and marked it in a portfolio. And with that goes a contribution to the portfolio. So
Thank you very much.
you're certainly welcome.
Thank you.
Come on down. There is an ace. Goes in here somewhere. We get them all shuffled around. Kind of. Like that, that. And I'll fan them out, and you have to draw the ace. A 9. Thank you for playing, but I have a consolation prize for you. Coffee Crunch.
President Kent,
Yes.
I want to give just a real quick sunshine report on a couple of things. Many of you know Phil Aaron, who was very involved in the senior center and making it become what it is today. His wife Carolyn passed away last Thursday. Services we think are the 6th, so I know many of us know Phil. But on better news, I saw Marty yesterday. Marty's doing well. I did something where no man has rarely gone before, and I saw his scar. Didn't want to see his scar. Didn't have to see the scar, but I saw his scar. And now I'm scarred for life. But anyway, Marty is recovering well. He's just like, go down, sit with him, ask for a better chair back in the bedroom, because when he had there, I think he had grammar school. But he's doing well. He's getting back there. He's anxious to get back. Might even get driving privileges fairly soon, which is a little scary, so be on the lookout. But he just wanted to, yeah, it does make a difference, says his attorney. But anyway, he wanted to pass on his appreciation for everyone, and we've got the invite out for the party. Hallelujah, we can all sleep now. There's party on December 14th, so you should have it in the last night for today's event. Thank you.
We have our Chuck Tillsbury joke, told today by Richard Leonard. Those of you who may not have been here at that time, Chuck Tillsbury always had a good joke for us. And so when he passed away some years ago, we resurrected the idea with his jokes. He always was just a little bit on the edge.
You mean politically incorrect? Well, I don't have perfect attendance, so you might have heard this joke. So there's a woman who goes to the family physician, and she says, "Doc, I can't take it anymore. My husband and I really haven't had any decent sex now for years and years." The doctor said, "Oh, I got that, just the solution for you." He said, "Take this packet of powder, it's a mixture of Viagra and some herbs, and put it in his coffee. See what happens." So she comes back a week later, and she looks kind of downfall. And he said, "What's wrong?" She said, "Well, I did what you said. I put the herbs in his coffee. About 20 minutes later, he throws me on the table, and we have the best sex we've had in 25 years. So she said, he said, "Well, what's wrong? What happened?" She said, "I don't think I can ever go back to that McDonald's."